Oh,
All
we're
right,
live.
so we're back. I went to unmute myself and I accidentally clicked the stop broadcast button. So that ended that really quick. And once you do that, then you can't get it back. So you got to start a whole nother episode. So we've got a whole nother episode here, part 2 of that. So
my feelings are hurt, man. You killed my demo.
Oh, I know.
Well, you're the one who muted everybody.
I know.
You started this whole thing.
All right. So should we get back to your demo? You want to pull that back up?
I'm done. That was it.
You're done. That was it. Okay. So catch part 1 of TIL episode today to see Mike Brocky's ng update command and check that out. I promise this is what happens.
I'll see if I can come up with something else for the end.
All right. Cool. All right, Bonnie, you want to give us a shot?
Okay. Yeah, I have. Should I do the easy one or the hard one first?
Do the easy one first.
Okay. I wasn't ready. Let me go pull it up. Where's my, I have to go. Okay. Let me share my screen. How do I share my screen? You would think I would know this by now. Oh yeah, I got it. I got this. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
So this is actually really, really simple. And it's so easy. Most of you will probably know this, but there's going to be a couple of you out there who have not seen this before, and you're going to be so excited because it's super, super easy. And let me make that bigger.
There.
Can you see it? You like this, Justin? How I said hello, AngularAir, just for you, so you know.
That's nice. This was, I like that.
Yeah. Okay, so where is it? Where's my code? Where did I put it? Oh, duh. You see, Mike, I blame you for this because you messed up everything and you distracted us, but that's okay. No, he's gonna mute me, you guys. Okay, so this is so simple. It doesn't I was looking at the TypeScript because most of what I do is in TypeScript, but it's not. It's just the ng if else, and it just happens right there in the HTML. So I said I was going to show y'all something super simple. So everybody already knows ng if, I would imagine, but you can do else. So it just works like this, right? And this is pretty self-explanatory, super, super simple. I love this. And then you just put the ng template down here. So whatever you put in the else needs to be the hashtag down here. So like if you wanted to change this to Mike, you would just change this as well to Mike. And as long as these match, it's just going to show whatever you have down here. So that's it. That's my ng if else, which I think is awesome. And I thought everybody knew this, but I ran across somebody last week who did not know that, and I was excited to show them because I think it's cool.
That person was me. I did not.
I wasn't going to say that. And honestly, I was tickled because I thought Austin knew everything. And to find something like this that Austin didn't know just totally made my day. So I wanted to show all of you just in case anybody hasn't seen that before. Isn't that cool?
Well, I'm a little offended. So now it basically is your demo is you muting me by toggling me into the else.
You had it coming, Mike. You started it. Okay, so Justin said to teach you guys 2 things that I've learned. And so I have another thing that's a little bit more complicated, but I'm just going to give you the gist of it. And actually, we were lucky. Well, let me show you. Okay, this started with, let me take off my screen share real quick and show you. How do I stop the screen share? There we go. Hello. Okay, so this started actually with a tweet from Victor Savkin, because Victor Savkin is a troublemaker, but we love him. So he was talking about switch map and merge map and concat map, and basically said there are a lot of people out there who are causing bugs with switch map, and the reason why is because switch map is meant to cancel anything that was happening. So when a new observable comes in, it will cancel the stream before it, which is, if you're trying to do like a type ahead or a search box or anything like that, this behavior is absolutely perfect because that's exactly what you want, to cancel whatever request was in process before that. But a lot of times what happens is we start using switch map and we just get a little bit carried away and we start putting it everywhere, and that can actually cause some not great behavior. So I did make a demo for this, but then Austin turned around and made a blog post which actually explains this much better than my demo. So I am going to point you guys towards that blog post. Can we, Justin? I can't put a link in the YouTube chat, but you can. So if I post it into to there, will you put it in the YouTube chat?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to be clear, Bonnie did all the hard work here. All I did was like write 3 paragraphs about it.
I don't know why I have such a problem with blogging, because he just blogs all the time, and I'm like, oh, I'm kind of shy. I don't want to say, because then everybody's going to tell me I'm wrong, and so I need to get over that, really. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and it brought up some discussion, and I think that there are some opinions out there about what people think. Switch map, merge map, concat map. There's a lot of discussion, but really, I'm not here to say who's right and who's wrong. I'm just saying it's a good discussion. So yeah. So be careful if you're using switch map. Make sure you understand what it's doing, because the thing that I found was if you do create a bug, it's a really tricky bug, because those bugs are intermittent and it's all based on luck and timing. So that's one of those bugs that drives me crazy, because you can sit there and click it over and over again and it'll work and not work, and no changes to the code. It just makes me insane. So those are tricky bugs. So be careful with switch map if you're using switch map.
I want to talk about switch map. In fact, I am actually lucky enough to talk about switch map at ngConf. Shai Resnick, Pete Bacon-Darwin, and myself will be talking about switch map in depth at ngConf on the first day. So if you have any questions about switch map, you're not exactly sure how it works or why it works or what exactly it does, be sure to tune in and check that out.
I can't handle that.
I feel like we need a T-shirt about switch maps. Justin, can you make that happen for ngConf this year?
Just make some what, ngAir switch map or what?
I think that it's going to be we're going to have problems, because if you put Shai Resnick, Mike Brocky, and Peter Bacon-Darwin all on the same stage together, the hilarity will be so severe that the whole building will collapse down on us, because we'll just laugh. So it's just, I'm a little worried that we're going to have some kind of medical attack, because it's going to be too funny. I can't handle that much.
I'm already excited about it. It's going to be great.
Cool. All right. My turn? Yes.
Yes.
Bring the house down, man.
Okay.
But not the stream, just the house.
Just that. All right. I'll try not to make that happen. Okay. I got some router stuff. So I'm going to show a few little simple router things. So let me share my screen. Let's see. Okay. Can everybody see that fine?
Yep.
Yes. Okay.
I'm going to try and make it a little bit bigger.
Well, we're going to ignore the files tree on the left-hand side here because this editor that I love so much just has a hard time zooming that part in. So it's tough for demos, but the code's going to look good. So we'll pull that up here. So I want to talk about when we work with params coming from routers. So coming from the routers, I'm going to pull up this vendor details here. And so in this vendor details component, it's kind of like to display a vendor, some company that sells products, right? And we have this components taken in an activated route, and we use the activated route, and we use the params, which is an observable, to get us to the params that are part of the route of the URL that's coming in, that's relative to this activated route that we've received. And we've probably been used to using this before to get a hold of those params, but there's actually something called param map as well as query param map to replace query params. So instead of params and query params, we should be using param map and query param map. But we can simply just change that in here to param map. Same deal, it returns observable, but this is like a map object. So we get to this value differently. So if we're subscribing here and we're receiving the params in here, now what we're going to do is we're going to call params.get, and then we hand it the name of the particular route identifier that we have for our particular route parameter. In this case, it's vendor ID. And so we can get to it that way. This is kind of—
Why would I want to do this instead of just not getting the snapshot?
why would you want to subscribe to this stream instead of like doing a snapshot of what the param is?
Yeah.
Okay, I can answer that. Well, let me mention the param map thing really quick, and then I'll answer that. So the param map is basically based upon this API. That's the URL search params API. So it does a similar sort of thing. Let me pull up my browser real quick, and I'll come back to that question, Austin, here in a second. So let me just switch to the browser.
While he's switching there, there's also on the I'm not trying to hijack your session, but on the topic of routing, sometimes like when you're trying to get parameters like that, right? They might be on like your parent route, right? Like you have to do like route.parent.params.get.
Stop. That's my second one.
Oh, sorry.
You forget how the show works. Like it's your turn to do the two things, and you just ask about those specific things, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. All right. Hold on a second.
I think we should mute Austin. But not you, Justin. You should not push any more buttons.
No, I will not. Right. Unless it's in code or not. Okay, here we go. Okay.
Justin, I just realized that you have that in your notes. I didn't even read that.
So here's another thing I just learned. Apparently, I can't share a guest browser window through Hangouts. So I have to open this up in like my user browser window. It's apparently not opening up. It's not allowing me to target the guest browser window when I share it in Hangouts. Not Angular related, but there you go. So here we go. Okay. Share application window. Or maybe it does, and I've just picked the wrong one. Okay. Can we see that?
Yep.
So this is the URL search params, and this is the API that this thing's based off of, right? So anyways, that's that. And then, so this idea here that we've got, okay, so what Austin was asking about is why would we want to subscribe to params instead of just taking the activated route snapshot and just asking, which is basically just the static data of what the capture is of those params at that given moment, and look at those, right? The reason being is that we can have a component that's on the screen for that route destination, and the data may change. The URL may change for the params, right? So the component's not going to get recycled. It's not going to get recreated at that point. It's still there on the screen rendered, and it's just going to change inside of itself. So when we subscribe to that, it allows us to say, okay, we got a new param in that URL. Now we can update our data that we're displaying in that particular component. Let me enlarge this here a little bit. So like in this case here, we have home vendor 4, vendor 26. So I can go to vendor 4. I can see vendor 4, and I'm using the ID from the param map to display that here in the template. And I change to vendor 26. And the component, that vendor details component, is not re-rendering, but that we're subscribed to the observable coming through that params. And so now we can update our display with that. So let's switch back to the code. Does that answer that, Austin? Yes? Yes, I'm assuming yes. I couldn't see.
Yes, I was shaking my head.
All right. All right. Okay, so the second thing, okay, so it's param map, right? So and I guess they're the params and the query params are going to eventually possibly go away, and we're going to be needing to use this param map and query param map. So look at switching over to that. Okay, the second thing that Austin was alluding to, I believe he was, is this ability to get data from up the route stream in your particular activated route that you're working with. And we can do that now with this flag that we can set when we declare our router module. Go here to our app module, our app routing module. And so we do this router module for root, we can pass in our routes, and then we can pass in this second option that can take some properties to configure the router, and we can do param inheritance strategy, and we can set this to either is it always or empty only or always. And so right now, maybe you've had a URL structure with your routes that you're doing. Like in our case here, we've got vendors. So we got URL, it's vendor slash, and then the vendor ID. And then we can look at the items for a vendor. So it'd be slash items and then slash item ID. And those are child routes of the vendor route and the vendor ID route, right? And so maybe our items, in this case here, where we have this items item ID, we want, or even the items, right? We need to pull up the items that are associated with that particular vendor ID. And this particular component, the items component, when it gets its activated route, it's only going to get the data that's relevant to it. So it's not going to have this access to that vendor ID as part of that URL, but we can turn that on now so that we can get access to it. Now, there's ways you could get to that data before. You could write some recursive code and dig into the snapshot and get to it, but you were writing your own code to kind of do it. So now we can set this thing to always, and now we'll have that availability to us. So when we go into something like the items component, we will be able to get a hold of that. So we would update this to param map, right? And we do param map vendor ID.
You need a .get, don't you?
Yes, I do. And look, I killed my IDE.
You need that variable should be params because that's a parameter to the function.
Correct.
His IDE crashed because
I
he's
just
web
wow.
server. This is why you should use VS Code.
VS Code.
Don't talk trash on other IDEs just because it's not the one you love.
I'm not talking trash. I'm stating facts here. It crashed.
It did crash. It's done.
You guys. Hey, Saren in the chat wants to know what's the advantage of params map over params. That's a very good question.
Yeah, so you can it makes it a little bit easier to get to those things. Like you can call .get to get to the particular one you're getting. So you can call get all. So we get all with that same name as an array. So if they're all called ID, you'd get an array of all the ones called ID.
It uses the JavaScript ES 2015 map.
Yeah.
Instead of like a hash.
Yeah, so it's like a map object, right? That's designed to store that information, a small subset of information like that with mapped key value sort of thing, right? So yeah. Okay, so the so param inheritance, set that thing to always, and that'll allow you to get a hold of all of that data. So now the param map, now the data that comes through. So if you have resolves, all of that will contain key values for all of the stuff for the entire route tree that's resolved in that particular activated route that you're on. So it's pretty handy to get to that information.
So to be clear about one thing that I think you said, but I'm not positive, that params may eventually be deprecated in favor of param map.
Yeah, I think that's what it says on the angular.io site about.
Okay.
I don't know if it's going to be deprecated. Maybe you have the answer. I don't know if it's going to do that, but it's recommended that you use param map and query param map.
Okay. If you
know
have
what?
a lot, hold on. If you have a lot of code in your application, and this is a change that you want to make everywhere within your application, you could create a schematic that would go through and analyze each file in your application, search for activated route for the use of params, and make the change dynamically to param map for you automatically.
You already had your turn, Mike. And also, Justin, I want to say I did not know about that. I knew about param map, but I didn't know that you could put it right there in the router, and that was pretty slick.
Cool. Okay. That's mine. Maybe Austin will have some great luck with all of his presentation. Let's see.
Austin, you have to, now all the pressure's on you because you have to bring it home with the grand finale and show us something epic.
Yeah, this is why I didn't want to go last, guys. Like, you just put all this pressure on me. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a couple different things today. One of the things that I've blogged about before is global air handling. So I see a lot of cases when people first get started with Angular, they'll have like services that, for example, like they'll do, my service dot get pandas, and then they, type a catch handler and all this type of stuff. And then they throw like a custom message when there's a catch. But Angular is so ahead of
Hey,
thinking
Austin, you're
so
not
far
sharing
ahead.
your screen.
Oh, I'm not?
No.
It says
Assuming
I am.
you meant to.
Says I am.
Well.
Your code looks a lot like you,
All right.
buddy.
How about now?
Now we can see your
Yes.
screen.
Okay, so anyways, we might have this like code that like calls a service like my service dot get pandas, and then like at the end we do a catch error, and then let's say we alert the user error, right? And I see a lot of people doing this, and they're implementing these catch errors on each service, and it's just kind of redundant. And Angular has like thought ahead, and they have basically gave us the ability to handle errors globally. So it's really easy to set this up, and you can look super cool at your work when you do this by removing everyone else's code that does all this in like one swoop. So we have an ng module here. That's my app module. And in my providers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to import the error handler class. And I'm going to say, I'm going to provide this class. And I'm going to tell it to use my global error handler class instead of the default error handler. And so now, anytime in the application when there's an error that actually occurs, rather than just throw the error, it's actually going to run this class that I've defined here. So I've got this global error handler. It implements error handler. It's got a handle error function here, and it passes me an error. And so, for instance, in this demo case, right, I just show like an alert message and say hello. Now, what I've done in the past is, maybe I'm working on an Angular material project, and I want to show like a little notification down on the bottom that an error occurred or something like that. You can get pretty creative with what you're doing here. Another thing that you can also do that is super cool is, our backend friends, they log all their errors to all these different systems so that they can, see what's going on in their application. Well, what you can actually do is you can, in your global error handler, you can actually, send the error to the backend so it can log it as well. So that's another thing that I do. Not only do I show like custom messages and things like that, but I also call services to actually log the errors to the backend so I can trace those. Now, if you're in production, you might not want to throw all your errors all over the screen, so you can actually just swallow the errors. But when you're in development, you probably want to see those errors, so you need to make sure you rethrow the error. So if we kind of look at this component, all I've got here is a button, and when I click it, it's going to throw a new error. And then we have my global error handler here, and you'll see a error message, hello, come up across the top. So that is super cool, something that's really easy to implement. And it doesn't like this. Really easy to implement, and you can do some really cool things with it. Anyone got any questions on that?
You could also swap out what's being injected there based off of the environment, correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do, right? This is, a stack blitz, so it doesn't have all the environment stuff set up like that. But yeah, you could, if you've got environments, set up, you could do something like this as well, right? So you're not throwing this error. Maybe if, Yeah. So there you go. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is actually a little more advanced. So I'm going to talk about content projection. So, many of us probably know about content projection. And content projection is basically like when we use ng content and we're going to like inject content into slots. And when Angular actually implemented this, they implemented it based on the shadow DOM specification of content. That's since then been deprecated in favor of a slot. But Angular is still implementing the ng content or the content slot, and the content and the spec for content within Shadow DOM says that web components will initialize the projected content even if they're not in the DOM. So, a lot of times we build like tabs or we build some type of like expansion panel, and right, it has like some type of, maybe it's got like ng content, and then, when it's activated, I'm going to show it. Well, the thing that you might not know is even though I have this ng if statement right here to if it out, right, it's not going to show this, it's still actually going to project that content and construct this component. So I have a component here called my app component. It's got my tab in it, and my tab has an active input. And then within my tab, I've got my counter. And I've got a button that's just going to toggle active. So in my tab component, I've got my input for whether it's active or not. I've got an ng if statement surrounding my ng content. And then if we look up here, I've got my counter, which is this component down here. And this component in the constructor, it's actually going to say alert here. Now, when we actually activate, when the page loads, you're going to see that this alert statement is going to be called even though it's not actually projected into the DOM. And this is per the specification. So let's refresh the page here. And you'll see right here, it's called here. So this can be, something that you don't realize is going on, right? Like it, I was talking about maybe you've got like a section with a header that you can kind of toggle. And when you open it up, it's going to like do some additional data fetching and then render some content. All those services are still going to run because it initialized that component. And it's really important to know that because, if you had several of those and they're heavy backend calls, it's still going to do that. Another thing that you need to know is if you're measuring DOM within components that are nested in content projection, say I want to have like some like fancy animation, right? And I want to measure the width of the DOM element. Well, when this constructor happens, and I try to measure the DOM and even ng on a init, so I can actually change this to ng on a init, and you're going to see that even ng on a init even fires too. The entire lifecycle happens. It just doesn't put it in the DOM. So if I were going to measure an element right here, it would measure 0, 0, 0, right? It's not the DOM. And so this is something that you can run into when you have these projected content slots like this, and you're trying to, measure some DOM for some like slide animation or something like that. So the next thing is like, how do we work around this? And this is kind of tricky, and the workaround is not really that great, but I've actually talked to quite a few people on this, and it is working as expected. There's a couple bugs logged out on the Angular repo about this, but the team is sticking by the way that it's implemented for certain technical reasons, and they want to stay with the spec. So you just need to be aware of it and also aware of how to fix this. So how do we fix this? So what we're going to do here is we're going to say my tab, and it's going to message. Instead of just project it straight in there, we're actually going to say ngIf my tab.active. we're going to wrap the projection in its own ngIf. Now, you notice that it didn't, run my alert box. Now, if I actually click it, now you'll see it ran it for me. So a pretty simple fix to a problem that can cause a lot of frustration, a lot of performance issues, and it's just something to be aware of. That's all I have for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it.
That was a good one. That was very in-depth. But it's one of those ones where it's like going to be really handy for people to know, when they come across that or when they hit that scenario, or in the challenging scenarios when they don't realize that, just like you were saying, right? It runs these services, runs these things that the component has inside of it, and you just really don't have any visual idea that it happens, yet you're paying the price for it, right? So that was a good one. I like that. All right, I think we got some bonus content. Is that right, Mike? Maybe one last one.
Yeah, I came up with something else.
All right.
Hold on real quick before we do the bonus content, Justin. You mentioned something about guest panelists. And if we have people watching who would like to be a guest panelist, how would they, should they tweet at you? How should they let you know?
Yeah. Tweet at me, DM me. DMs are open.
What's your phone number?
My phone number is not for you.
11.
But yes, please reach out to me. Yeah, we're always looking for people that want to come on. Go ahead.
Sorry. So you don't have to be an expert to be a guest panelist, but you do have to be sworn to secrecy. Before we go live, we're not always well behaved, so you can't. We go off track a lot, but yeah. So you can be a guest panelist, and you do not need to be an expert. So you should just tweet at Justin and say, "Hey, I want to be a guest panelist." Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
All right, go Mike. I'm sorry, I'll be quiet.
We want to have a platform where we can get guests that come on that want to talk about, share information, share the stuff that they've done, content they want to do, whether they've shared before. We're always looking for people that maybe get a feel for it. Certainly welcome that as well. So just reach out to me. You could also reach out to any of our panelists and they can relay that to me, however you want to do it. But certainly, please do. I'd love to have everybody. So cool. All right, Mike.
All right, a little bit of backstory, because this isn't anything super fancy or anything else, but I have a confession. When I develop for the CLI, I do a lot of console.logs, and that's how I debug. I figure out what's going on based off of logging to the console. And you can only see what you log. It's a very iterative approach, and it's not very performant. So after working on the CLI for about 2 years now, I decided to bite the bullet and figure out in VS Code how to set up debugging in VS Code. So I wanted to show that. Nothing necessarily you need to do any development on the CLI yourself, but if you are in a situation where you're writing a Node backend and you're writing in TypeScript, you can't just run. You need to be able to compile your TypeScript. So I want to go over that configuration. So to show that running first, I have a debug window up here, and then it's just debug CLI. And I'm going to go into the new command. So just open up commands./new.ts. So inside here, I just put, whenever this gets initialized, I just put a breakpoint in here. And that's just by coming over here into the gutter and clicking the button to be able to get that to show up. So I go back to my debug window and I say, all right, run in debug. So it's going to go through and start up that process. And you'll see here that this is going to turn into like a yellowish color. And that means that it stopped at this point. So I have access to everything that's on this particular class, which is the new command class. So I can see all the properties down in here in the debug console. And if you guys have done any debugging with VS Code, you have all the tools that are there. So I can say this .name is going to return new, or this .description. I'm going to come out here. I also have all these local variables, so I can see all of that stuff over here as well, and be able to debug through and get a good experience. And the way that you set this up is by setting up a launch profile. So I'm just going to open up the launch.json file. and hide that down here. And all I've done is I set up a type node. The request is launch. That's a name, just whatever's going to show on this dropdown. The program is whatever file within your application that you want to start up. More than likely, it's an index.js. Here for the CLI, it's this path into the ng file. The kicker in the hard part, or the difficult part, is that you need to supply a runtime argument. And what this is doing is it's allowing Node to say, hey, include this register, this TypeScript node register function, or this import, so that TS node can process your TypeScript compilation for you without you having to run a build step in between your runs. You can also set the current working directory. So for me, for the CLI, I can specify that this project here is the context in which I want to run the CLI, and then the arguments. I haven't figured out a way how to get VS Code to prompt me to enter that, because that would be super helpful. But here I just set it up to run the new command with a name, delete me, and each string gets parsed in as a space here. So it's actually like running ng new, delete me. But that's one thing I still need to figure out. And then also the console, I turned it on to use the integrated terminal so that I could see any output within here as well, which is helpful. But just a little configuration. So the big one here to remember is the runtime args -r and ts node /register, which you'll need included within your project, your TypeScript node project, to be able to transpile your TypeScript for you to be able to run it. Any questions?
That's a good one. I've fought with this before, and TS Node is a really cool tool for like the people that don't know what TS Node is. It's basically like runtime builds. So you don't actually have to like run a build to get your compiled code. And not only for debugging, but like if you're developing Node apps, like TS Node is actually really useful for that too. So you don't have to run build commands in your like main file. You can just include TS Node, and then the rest of your files can be TypeScript. So it's really useful for that too.
Yeah, because Node by default doesn't know how to run a TypeScript file. But if you register TS Node within your application directly as a require statement, it'll do that for you. But here, you don't even have to worry about doing that and then adding that extra step to your application code. Here, you're just applying it as a command line argument to running your application. So whether or not you're running an Express app or just a any other Node app that's just so you can run JavaScript locally, if you want to write some code locally, like just a quick runner to say, hey, I want to write some snippet code to test a function and run it quickly, but I want to use TypeScript because I want to use types like I do in the rest of my applications to create a snippet and run those locally without having to run a compiler in a watch mode or anything else with a build step.
Now, this will be handy for us if we're writing our custom schematics too, right?
Yeah, I think, yes.
Be able to debug? Yeah, no, maybe.
I haven't gone that route yet. I haven't set it up within there, but I don't see why not. But the other reason that I wanted to do this is the CLI team is all remote to each other. And I've fortunately been accepted into the VS Code Live Share preview. So to be able to runtime and show coworkers without having to do a screen share, but they can actually click through the code as well to see code running in my environment versus their environment directly within the editor.
Very cool. Very cool.
And I found something else to share. Yay.
2 + 2 + 2 + 2. All right. Well, that's a wrap on that. Should we do some picks and then call it, or those count as our picks today? What do you think? Anybody have any?
I have a pick.
Okay.
I got nothing else.
All right. Bonnie, share your pick. I have a pick too.
Yeah, go first because I'm not ready. I have to look up the link.
Okay, no problem. So my pick is Gifsky. It's a GIF creator, but it's like they bill it as the highest quality GIF encoder based on something. But yeah, you want to make some animated GIFs, however you want to say it. You can make them from video clips. So maybe we can have some great ones.
Not video clips of this show.
Not of the show.
It's right here. is going to be a GIF someday.
All right. So that's gif.ski. So check it out. That's my pick. Bonnie, you ready? No, maybe. Yes. Okay. Can't hear
Yes.
you. I don't know. Okay. Go for it.
Okay, so sometimes I like to pick a person as a pick, and I'm going away from I'm going away from tradition, and I'm going out on a limb here because I'm picking somebody that I actually have not met, but I'm really tickled because I was going through the speakers for ngConf because I'm super excited about ngConf, and I found this girl named Natasha Carleon. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It kind of makes her sound like a gangster. But anyway, so she's doing a talk on reactive forms based on the Dungeons and Dragons character sheet, which I think is the coolest thing. Like, that is such a good idea, and I'm super jealous because I really want that to be my idea, but it's too late because it's already her idea, and I just got so tickled by that. I thought that was the coolest thing, and so I followed her, and I think all you should follow her. Come to ngConf and check out that talk because I'm pretty excited about that. I'm almost as excited about that as I am about Mike and Shai and Pete. Anyway, so she is NS Carleon on Twitter, and I think she's pretty amazing. And I haven't met her yet, but I'm pretty excited about meeting her. So go follow her and come see her at ngConf. And Natasha, if you're listening, I'm a big fan. Okay, that's it. I'm done.
I +1 that pick. That's a great pick. I like it. All right, that's a wrap. Promise we won't feed the Mogwais after midnight for next show. It should be all ironed out. So hope it helps.
Mogwai.
We will catch you next week. We got Minko coming on talking about Angular tooling next week. So that'll be pretty cool. So join us. All right, see ya. I'm hitting stop broadcast now. I hope it's a good time.